And I think that's what 2020 and 2016 taught us more than anything, is the role of the intelligence agencies and law enforcement in politics. It started out spying on Donald Trump in 2016, and it ends up censoring the New York Post and other people in 2020. We don't know what they're doing now, but it's hard to believe they just gave it all up.
Welcome to the Michele Tafoya podcast.
Well, he is Michael Goodwin, and he is a columnist from the New York Post, a beloved columnist from the New York Post, with a really rich and interesting background in journalism, which we will get into. He went to Columbia, by the way, and taught at Columbia, and has some really interesting words to say about his alma mater. We'll get to that. We'll get to the Trump trial in New York. We'll get to the Hunter Biden laptop. We've got so much to get to that we had to split this episode into two pieces because we want you to be able to enjoy them in little nuggets. So this is going to be part one of our talk with Michael Goodwin. And honestly, this is one of the most enjoyable conversations I've had in a long time. This man is really experienced. He's got a breadth of knowledge of the topics and experiences that I certainly don't have that I hope you're going to enjoy. Before we get to Michael Goodwin, I'm going to just spend a minute or so here on Caitlin Clark, because this story just exploded. She did not make the Olympic team, the women's Olympic basketball team. Now, most of you know who Caitlin Clark is. And why is that? It's because she's a household name. And why is that? It's because she's a basketball phenom, a generational talent who's changed women's basketball. That is not to discount any of the previous women's basketball stars, like Cheryl Miller, like Annie Myers, later Ann Myers Drysdale, like Cheryl Swoops, like Rebecca Lobo, like Lisa Leslie, like Sue Bird, like Diana Taurasi. I could go on and on. Sabrina Ionesco. I could go on and on. But I have a feeling that the one name out of all of those that I just mentioned, that the most popular name that I just mentioned is Caitlin Clark. There is no surprise that the NCAA Women's Championship game outrated on television the NCAA Men's Championship game this year. Why? Caitlin Clark. Now, maybe it's the cool alliteration of her name, Caitlin Clark. Maybe it's that she's the all-time leading scorer in college basketball history, men or women, outscoring Pistol Pete Maravich, who held that record for many, many years until Caitlin broke it. Maybe it's her style of play that is very similar to that of Steph Curry, the dynamic guard out of Golden State. Whatever the reason, Caitlin Clark is one of the most popular basketball players in the world. She's not just popular, she's a hell of a player. As Lisa Leslie, the former Olympian and WNBA great, said, she's a baller. She may be the best player in the world. Now, she's just graduated college. She's just entered the WNBA as the number one overall pick. She's finding her way. But that doesn't mean she would be a detriment to be on the Olympic basketball team. In fact, she would be a massive asset because the amount of attention this Olympic team would have gotten with Caitlin Clark on it would have been 50-fold what it's going to get without her on it. Now, she has said all the right things. She said, I'm, sure it's a little bit of a disappointment, but you know what? I'm going to cheer them on. She said all the right things. Young athletes, male, female, I don't care who you are, look at the way she handled herself when answering that question and try to emulate that. You don't need to be a jerk to be admired. You don't need to be a jerk to get noticed and heard. Now, that's not to say Caitlin Clark can't be a jerk. She's shown that she can. But she also seems to be the target of some kind of jealousy. And there's a racial component that people have brought to the table with Caitlin Clark. It's fascinating, but look, she broke the scoring record in college. She's the number one overall pick on the WNBA. None of those things could be controlled by anyone else but the people who did those things. But USA Basketball could control the people that it picked for its team. 12 roster spots available, and they did not include her. I was asked earlier, well, if you're USA basketball and you've won all these gold medals and now you risk your gold medal streak because you add Caitlin. No, you don't risk it. There are far more than 12 great basketball players in America on the women's side. Far more. Some others were snubbed as well. You could make arguments for a lot of them. The difference here it is, folks. This is the essential difference. The women's game has been begging us, pleading with us, I would say even lecturing us that we need to support women's sports, specifically their sport of women's basketball. Here you go. Here's the brightest star the game has seen in decades, but we're not going to put her on the Olympic team. We're going to put her in prime time on all her WNBA games. We're going to stream some of her games. She's going to sell out games all over the country, even when she's on the road, away from the Indiana Fever, the team for which she plays. But we're not going to put her on the Olympic team. Diana Taurasi is a phenomenal player. She's going to be 42. They put her on the team. She is poised to win her sixth straight gold medal, which would be unprecedented. So there was a reason that maybe they wanted to keep Diana Taurasi, also a guard, on the team so that she could win an unprecedented sixth gold medal. They know what they're getting with Diana Taurasi. Fine. But I want to hear the real reason, and no one's ever going to tell us why they left the most famous name in women's basketball off the team. It would not be a pity play or a sympathy play to put her on the team. It would not be oh, she's nice, let's include her. She's a baller. She could sit on the pine the entire time and still they'd get more attention with her on the bench. Imagine the media coverage in Paris if she were going. I don't know, man. I've heard people today say maybe it's jealousy. I'm starting to think maybe it is. It's that short-sighted that it's jealousy, that they resent this young woman coming up and just shining and setting the scoring record and setting the basketball world ablaze. And they sort of want to stifle that. They say they want to grow the game. They say they want exposure. Imagine the number of eyeballs the rest of that team could have gotten had they sacrificed one spot. It wouldn't even be a sacrifice had they given that one spot to one of the most famous human beings in America right now, Caitlin Clark. But they didn't. And I don't want to hear about, I want the 12 best players. Well, you could argue they didn't even get the 12 best players. You could argue they could have mixed it up 3 different ways and still gotten 12 awesome, amazing, great players. What they're not getting by omitting Caitlin Clark is they're not getting more eyeballs and more attention on the game that they could have gotten so easily. And why? I don't know. We can only guess. And it just doesn't sound like a good enough reason. Rest? She didn't need rest. She's 22. She's not going to play enough. The fans will be mad. You thought they were going to be mad if she didn't play enough? Listen to them now that she's not on the team. That is my rant. I feel very strongly about this. I've taken a lot from people online that say, oh, stop, you're clueless. You don't know what you're talking about. I've been covering women's basketball for decades. I was one of the first play-by-play voices on the WNBA. And that is not here to pat my back. That's because Hannah Storm, Robin Roberts, and I were chosen to be the 3 network play-by-play voices for the WNBA when it started. I know a little bit about this game. I know what this league wants and craves and desires, and that is more eyeballs. Do they deserve it? They sure showed that they did in the NCAA tournament. But here, on the massive global stage, they have eschewed that attention for I don't know what reason, but it doesn't sound like a good one. That is my rant on Caitlin Clark. Coming up next, Michael Goodwin of the New York Post. He is just wonderful to listen to. You're going to love this. But let me tell you something. My son just graduated high school. I don't know if you have a grad in your family, but I've got the perfect gift for every grad. And by the way, Father's Day coming up, every dad, every grad. Go to besthotgrill.com. So many special events coming up, and besthotgrill.com recommends the gifts of great grilling and healthy eating. And so do I, because I've got one of these. If you're looking for a dad or a grad you want to honor, do it with a gift that will be used and will be unforgettable and truly hot. That would be a Solair infrared grill from besthotgrill.com. Solair infrared grills heat up to 1,000 degrees in just 3 minutes. It can even do that on a freezing back porch in the wintertime. I know because I've tried it. The Solair produces juicy, tasty food. It is unmatched by your typical conventional grill. Now, you might also be taken to the road, having a staycation this summer. Solair has hot and fast portable, built-in, and cart models to help you step up your grilling game. All Solair infrared grills are made in the USA and built to last. More importantly, Solair infrared grills deliver the wow that everybody likes to receive in a gift or major purchase. So learn more about the amazing Solair infrared grills at besthotgrill.com. That's besthotgrill.com. Solair infrared gift giving at besthotgrill.com. Michael Goodwin is next. Mr. Goodwin, or do you prefer Michael or Mike or MG, or what are we going with?
Michael's good enough.
Michael is, it's great. Was to be my name. If I had been a boy, which they expected me to be, my name was supposed to be Michael John. I ended up Michelle Joan, but that's a story for another day. So we have that in common. It's great to meet you. This is the first time we're talking, and I love telling people that so they sort of know that this is pretty organic. This is just happening on the fly here.
Yes.
You started as a sports writer, you mentioned. Do I have that right?
Well, no, I took a detour into sports. I actually was a general assignment reporter for the New York Times. I went there right out of college and served through various clerkships and scut jobs and eventually got to be a reporter. Covered politics pretty soon after the start, was the New York Times bureau chief in City Hall when Ed Koch was mayor.
Wow.
And then I co-authored a biography of Ed Koch, and I was absolutely sick to death of politics. So I said, I'd like to cover sports. So the Times graciously sent me to the sports department, where I covered mostly the business of sports, television, but also just the way college teams earned money when they went away for weekends to other stadiums, and investigations of sports, the cocaine issue in the 80s, the famous trial in Pittsburgh over cocaine use among players. So it was a nice transition from politics to sports, but I discovered at the end of that I really did like politics a lot more than I'd remembered. So I'm back at it, have been, and except for a short stint of teaching at the Columbia School of Journalism, my alma mater, undergraduate only, I have remained covering politics for all the years since.
Okay, now you've taken me down a detour, which I'm going to jump on. Columbia.
Yes.
While you were there as either a student or while you taught, how aware were you, if at all, that there was this strain of anti-Semitism or this kind of extreme activism within the student body and really the professorial departments, if you will?
Well, while your audience probably thinks I'm 45 years old, I'm actually quite a bit older. I was at Columbia in 1968 as a student, my freshman year. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, so I was horrified at the events when the SDS, then the Students for a Democratic Society, took over the president's office. This, of course, was during Vietnam, and the police were sent in. And I believe the police had not been on the Columbia campus until this past year, when they were called because of the students who are very much the inheritors of that radicalism. Now it's an anti-Semitism more than anything else. I was shocked by the anti-Semitism that erupted at Columbia and across the many other college campuses. I know many Israelis many American Jews, I believe, feel very much violated, that their trust in America has been broken now. They thought America was a safe place for them, given their history. And now they don't feel as safe. And so I think this was a shocking, horrible event. I think it continues. We saw that over the weekend in Washington, D.C. And I think Columbia has been an incubator of this. Much as it was an incubator of the '68 riots, it has been an incubator through its faculty, through the radicalism of its faculty, and through what really I believe is an anti-American spirit.
Agreed.
That runs through the faculty, and much of it anyway, and has been tolerated as an eccentric quality by various presidential administrations at the school. But now we see how nasty and destructive it is, how dangerous it is. And I believe the current president of Columbia, who is new, doesn't yet have her hands around it. I think she's timid. I think the Board of Trustees are timid. And I think they have failed to come to grips with how serious and dangerous this indoctrination is.
What is it going to take to untimidify them? In other words, to embolden them, to give them the courage to say, sorry, no, not here at Columbia and hopefully other places. I mean, we saw Northwestern basically capitulate to these protesters and give in and grant professorships and scholarships to Palestinian students, which to me is only going to maybe further the problem, not because they're Palestinian, but because of what their values are. This is what's frightening to me. What do you think it's going to take at Columbia?
Well, I agree with you about Northwestern. Other schools have gone not quite as far, but have also rewarded the people who caused this chaos and who are voicing this anti-Semitism. Brown, for example, promised to give the students a vote on its next corporate board decisions on how to invest the endowment. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. We have gotten, I think the adults in this country have gotten so frightened of children, of younger people. I mean, it does in some ways resemble these cultural revolutions in China, what happened in Cambodia, where the adults sort of forfeit their leadership and values roles and subject themselves to the whims of children. And in the end, you get these children whom you see, and these are children, many of them, 18, 19 years old. They're not ready for the real responsibility of running a school. But that, in fact, is what has been given to them by these cowardly presidents and administrators.
So it's been heartening to see people, just dipping into the sports world again, Bob Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, say, you're not getting another dollar from me, to his alma mater, other people coming forward and saying, I'm not donating anymore, and you were getting a whole lot from me, but no more until this stops. I mean, that would seem to me to be a real wake-up call, far stronger than the threats of these kids. And I am going to call them kids, and then the activists. So is that going to, do you think that's going to be a tipping point?
Well, I think it's certainly gotten their attention. I mean, Kraft, for example, named the football stadium. The football stadium at Columbia is named after him. And so he, by withdrawing support, I think he is clearly sending an important message. I mean, these schools, although they have major endowments, they still need money year to year to attract the best students, the best professors, to name buildings, to build buildings. All of that is what the funding provides. And I think the real test will come when parents tell their students, no, we're not having you apply to Columbia. We don't want you to go to Columbia. Now, when I went to Columbia many, many years ago, my parents had never heard of Columbia. But when they were told it was in the Ivy League, and I learned that, I mean, when I was interviewed, I was recruited to play football. And when I was interviewed, the coach who came to me said, "Do you know where Columbia is?" I said, "No, I don't." This was in Pennsylvania, it's not like at the other side of the moon. And he said, "New York." I said, "Oh, I've been to New York." And so this was a kind of learning thing. I was so proud. And my parents, of course, were so proud that I went there, that I graduated. But now I think many parents will say, no, I don't want you to go there. And when that happens in large, large numbers, particularly among Jewish students and Jewish families, then I think these schools will really be faced with it. Right now, I think this is a warning sign, but I think worse is yet to come.
Oh, gosh. You know, at the heart of our democracy lies free speech, codified in the First Amendment, and thank goodness for that. It is the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish. But in this digital age that we're experiencing, discussions about our wealth, our rights, and our future are being silenced or overshadowed in mainstream narratives. And that leaves a lot of you feeling voiceless in conversations that are really important to our financial independence and our financial security. And this is where wealth protection research steps in, armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research is not a financial advisory firm. They're defenders of free speech. They're committed to giving a voice to the silenced. Wealth Protection Research tirelessly seeks out financial experts. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of the 2024 election. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report. This free report highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election. It contains ideas the mainstream media won't touch, and listeners can get it completely free. Just text the word IDEAS, IDEAS, to 76626 to claim your free copy. If you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, then act now. Text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy of this 2024 Election Protection Report. It's time to widen the scope of what we're told, to hear ideas the establishment does not think you can handle, and to take control of our financial destinies. Text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy.
But I think worse is yet to come.
Oh gosh, that's look, both of my parents went to Cal Berkeley and graduated around 1958. My sister and I went to Cal Berkeley. I sent my diploma back to Cal Berkeley because I saw them shunning certain conservative speakers and caving to the student body who said, we don't want them here. If you don't want them there, just don't go listen. But to throw rocks through windows and to bust up the campus and have the university police say, stand down, we're going to let them do what they want to do. And, to me, it was insane. It was ridiculous. So, look, I would strongly discourage my kids from applying to Berkeley. And so I hope I sent that message, but it does take a lot of courage. And I don't know, how much courage do you think we have in this country right now? Are we at a point where it's starting, we've seen this strong shift to the left, at least in voice, in vocal tenor and tone. But I get the sense, Michael, and I hope I'm not wrong, that it's gotten to the point where people are like, whoa, this isn't what we thought it was. You've gone too far. We're pulling back.
Well, yes, and I think it's also the left itself doesn't know where to stop, and so it keeps going and going. And just take the border situation as an example, right? Now, we are a pro-immigrant nation, by and large, a big majority for immigration, legal immigration. Even I think there's a soft spot for anybody who makes it across the border, particularly women and children, that sort of thing, people looking for a better life. But when you bring in 10 to 12 million in 3 years, then the country at large says, no, that's not what we meant.
Yeah.
You've gone too far. Mm-hmm. And I think the gone too far part is where we are now, that the country is waking up, that the left has too much power, it's gone too far, and it's incapable of governing in practical ways. So everything seems to be getting worse at the same time.
Yeah.
The government has no answer, but it keeps wanting to make sure you get your pronouns right. That's, it's
priorities,
too much,
right?
Yeah, that's what they care about.
Yeah.
And, you think about for example, Pete Buttigieg, the transportation commissioner, all about EVs, all about the climate change. They're giving, $7 billion to build out the infrastructure for the charging network. And they've built, 7 or 8? I mean, it's that sort of thing. If you can't match your words with actions that make sense to people, that give people confidence in your leadership, then your whole argument collapses.
And I think what exacerbates that is then this, the term of the day is gaslighting, but basically this attempt by the administration to say, "Oh, what are you talking about? The economy is great. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? The border's open." No, it's not. And we're seeing one thing with our own eyes and being told something else. And it's really, to me, it's insane. It's like, come on, you don't think we're that stupid. I don't know how the rest of America sees it, but I think that is making people really, I don't know if suspicious is the right word, of what's going on in that White House and that Capitol building in DC.
I agree with you. I think that they've most of the country has had it. They no longer trust their government at large. I mean, we have all kinds of examples that we've never had before, certainly in modern times, of the government double standards on the Justice Department, for example, depending on your political affiliation, depending on your causes, whether you get investigated or not, whether you get arrested or not, whether you get put in prison or not. All of these things seem to matter depending on your political affiliations. We've not had that before. We had this talk about democracy, but the party in power wants to lock up the opponent candidate, the leader of the opposition party. They want to bankrupt him. They want to keep him off the ballots. In the name of democracy, they want to keep a candidate off the ballots. I mean, so this stuff, it's not making sense anymore. Right. And I think that's the breaking point.
Well, when you see a Democrat in John Fetterman say, "I'm not a progressive," and he's starting to look sane when in his early days of his being a congressman, senator.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's a little scary. In the early days, you thought, okay, he's, how did this happen? How did this guy get elected? He is starting to look like maybe one of the more middle of the road centrist types of people. What does that tell you?
Well, I mean, it's sort of a joke that tells itself, but he seems to have had some kind of awakening. When he was hospitalized, he went in one way and came out a different way. I mean, not sure what medicines they gave him, but I think they should spread them around the country because he has come out of there sounding sensible and sounding like somebody who cares about the country more than he does a party. Yeah. And that's what I think has been lacking. And that's this idea that there are no limits, right? It's one of the questions the Supreme Court will generally ask in its hearings is, yes, Mr. Government lawyer, you say you have the right to do this, but tell me, what right don't you have? What are the limits to your rights? Mm-hmm. And if the government lawyer cannot answer that question adequately, they lose the case because it is about limits. The Constitution is designed to share power, to block power, to keep anyone from accumulating too much power. Right. So we are now in an age, for example, where the Supreme Court says Joe Biden could not, with the stroke of a pen, forgive billions and hundreds of billions of dollars in student loan. Normally, that would be the end of it. But he has found a way to do it piecemeal so that he's not doing it all at once. And he thinks, aha, Supreme Court can't stop me. Okay. So that's something new. That's something new coming from a White House. Yes, FDR tried all kinds of things. Presidents have tried things. But when they've been stopped, they generally stop. Here we have a president who boasts about going around the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court does not have an army, does not have a police force. It relies on the trust and the understanding and the compact between the governed and the governed. Mm-hmm. And when that's broken, we're kind of at sea.
I don't know where you are right now, but it has been warm and sunny and beautiful. This is summertime at its best. And when warmer summer days are calling, fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. These are a staple in my fridge because I want to meet my wellness goals and I want to do it all throughout the summer. And what you get is a menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. I do not exaggerate. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. I'm not kidding. I keep a stack of these in my fridge, throw one in the microwave for 2 minutes, 2 little minutes, and you're on to a healthy new routine. They've got 35 different meals, more than 60 add-ons. You can crush your wellness goals with dietitian approved meals. Make your day delicious. These meals are really good, folks. Really, really good. They are restaurant quality meals. It keeps your kitchen time to a minimum, and it is just effortless support for your lifestyle. So head to factormeals.com, factormeals.com/Tafoya50, Tafoya 50. That's a 50. Use code Tafoya50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code Tafoya50 at factormeals.com/Tafoya50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Don't wait on this. You're not going to regret it. I asked you to reflect on Columbia. I'd like you to reflect also, if you don't mind, on the New York Times where you used to work. You know, there were certainly people who were ringing the alarm bells on how far left their point of view had gone at the New York Times, the gray lady. And then I thought, in an incredibly bold, courageous, and important move, Barry Weiss, who had written for the New York Times, wrote a resignation letter and made it very public as to why she was leaving. She saw that it was not a place where objective journalism was being done. So when you reflect on your time there versus what you're seeing now, what is the biggest difference?
Well, I started there right after college as a clerk in the morgue, which is the clipping file, where we used to tear apart the paper every day and file it according to the byline, the location, it says the topics. And so I worked my way onto the reporting staff slowly, very slowly, as it turns out. But then I became a reporter for 10 years. I was City Hall bureau chief. I was covered sports, covered housing, and had a great experience. I learned, and this was then the days of Abe Rosenthal, A.M. Rosenthal, who was the editor. And he was very strict that your opinion was not wanted. You were to report the facts and let the reader make the decision. And so if you tried to sneak your opinion in, which we all tried to do, it would just be taken out. And they wouldn't call you and say, hey, you know, your third paragraph went a little far. We took that out. No, you found out when you read the paper the next day that the little line you thought you had, you know, put in there to catch the reader and let the reader, you know, wink, wink. Here's how I feel about what the mayor did today. No, it was gone. Wow. And that's the way the Times operated. Very strict on ethics. I mean, there's this famous story that I thought reflected the ethical rules. A woman had been hired by the New York Times from a Philadelphia paper. I'm pretty sure it was the Philadelphia Inquirer. She came to New York to work, and soon after she arrived in New York, there were stories in the Philadelphia paper's competitor that while she was covering politics, covering the city hall in Philadelphia, she had had an affair with a city official and accepted expensive gifts from him while she was writing about the government.
Wow.
And so Abe Rosenthal, the editor, called her in and said, is it true? She said, yes. He said, clean out your desk. You'll never work here again.
Wow.
Whereupon a number of times reporters, you know, demanded a meeting with him. They thought he had been too strict and that she was unfairly treated because she was a woman. And so Abe Rosenthal listened to them for a few moments, and he had this way of silencing people. He would do this. And he said,
wave a finger like,
Yeah,
like
enough.
Dikembe Mutombo when he'd block a shot.
That's right. Don't try that again.
Yeah.
So he said to them, look, you can sleep with elephants if you want to on your free time, but you cannot then cover the circus for the New York Times. And that was the end of his ethics lecture. And I think that was the kind of place it was. It was very paternalistic in many ways. It then was a private company before it went public, of course. But you felt you were working for people, with people who had a similar idea about what journalism meant, what was fairness. I mean, it wasn't you were to be objective. An editor quickly disabused me of that line. He said, it's not objectivity because nobody's really objective. We have our feelings, we have our opinions. What you must be is fair. In your columns, in your stories, you must be fair, which means you have to talk to the other side. You have to give the other side ample time to respond and to make their case. And that's what's missing today. It's one-sided only. Everything is a narrative. Everything is the agenda of the editors and the reporters. There's no fairness in the New York Times. It's all gone. It's all just you're either with us or you're against us. And we'll run over you if you're against us, which is what the New York Times does.
So in our next episode, part 2 with Michael Goodwin, I'm going to push back a little bit. He went from the New York Times to now the New York Post. You can argue the New York Times is very liberal, but can you also say the New York Post is very conservative? Is it fair? I will ask him that in part 2 of this episode, dropping in just a couple days. Please join us. It gets really juicy in the next episode. Talk a lot about this Trump-Biden election, and it is good. You won't want to miss it. In the meantime, be brave, do good, and we'll see you in a couple days.